Striking for a fair contract. The latest from podnews.net with Libsyn. Stop dreaming, start podcasting. After Hollywood writers started a strike in early May, the actor union SAG-AFTRA joined the strike on Friday for what they call a fair contract. Here's President Fran Drescher.
Employers make Wall Street and greed their priority, and they forget about the essential contributors that make the machine run. We have a problem.
The union also represents some journalists, radio personalities, broadcasters and voice actors. It's likely to put a hold on some podcast production since it includes voice acting and narration. It's the first time both writers and performers have been on strike simultaneously for 63 years. And yes, there's a podcast for that. It's by Deadline and it's called Strike Talk. Elsewhere, Spotify has reportedly made some users' private playlists public. Playlists can include podcasts, the title of which may reveal that someone is fighting alcoholism, is exploring their sexuality, or is fighting mental or physical illness. A number of news podcasts are being censored by Meta's Facebook, Instagram and Threads in Canada after the Canadian government passed Bill C-18, a new law requiring tech companies to pay to link to news content. The 905er podcast is one of those affected. In a video, Canadian YouTuber and journalist JJ McCulloch calls it akin to extortion.
The bill is so ill-conceived and proving to be so counterproductive in practice that it is actually throwing the future of the free press in Canada into doubt.
Is YouTube Music rolling out podcasts internationally, as claimed on Friday? Well, in Australia, we see podcasts promoted in the search box now, but not actually available in search. Pod News readers in Canada, New Zealand and the UK aren't seeing podcasts at all. We asked Google early Friday, but they didn't respond. We've asked again for you. In the UK, the Audio Production Awards 2023 have been announced by organisers Audio UK. The awards are opening earlier this year to give producers more time to enter. One category, grassroots production, will be free to recognise the particular challenges faced in that sector. And Pod Inbox can now accept typed messages as well as voice messages. You can turn that feature on in your profile if you want them. It's time for some tech stuff, and Podfans is now listed on the Podcast Index and our new Podcast Apps page. It's the only podcast player that supports all the new podcast namespace features. You can join the waitlist on the website at podfans.fm. In the Podcasting 2.0 podcast this week, Adam Curry looks back at 20 years of podcasting and what he regrets about Apple's involvement. The podcast host reviews the Sennheiser Profile microphone. We reviewed the microphone and its boom arm earlier this year. And if you're a podcast host, if a creator wants to delete an episode, it's not enough to just delete the episode from an RSS feed. You need to delete the episode's audio too and invalidate the cache from your CDN, or at least rename it to render it unplayable. Some podcast platforms and players retain metadata from deleted episodes, thus keeping them playable even after a creator has tried to remove them, we've found. And in podcast news, we cover Rep-In, which aims to present representation in a multifaceted manner that transcends race, gender and orientation. A new podcast that might contain Banksy's voice. The Banksy story, new from BBC Radio 4 today, getting you closer than ever before to Banksy's secret world to tell the story of the graffiti kid who made spraying walls into high art. A new semi-monthly podcast, Security Heroes, is shedding light on the positive aspects of keeping people safe. Three Doors Down has been announced by Tortoise Media, a 5-part investigative series telling the story of Sharon Henderson's 30-year campaign for justice after the brutal murder of her 7-year-old daughter. And Bourke Street in Melbourne in Victoria is a place where busking musicians are often to be found. The current season in Street Music Map Radio focuses beyond Bourke Street, looking at buskers in a digital world. This podcast is sponsored by Libsyn. Are you ready to tell your story? Libsyn has an all-in-one, fast, easy podcast tool that allows you to plan, record, and create your podcast today. Stop dreaming, start podcasting with Libsyn, LIBSYN.com. And that's the latest from our newsletter. To read all the stories and subscribe, we're at podnews.net.